I want to show you now. So we can come back over to our primary. If you want to, even if you, we'll just do this. I'll separate this out into two different terminals so you can kind of see them side by side. This is one reason when I do like Windows like Snap Manager, so like you like drag it to the side, it snaps to the side. I think you can do that as well with Mac. I'm too lazy to have enabled it. So now I can come over here and I can say curl that address, put HTTP in front of it, ://:8000. And if I do that, you can see here, it sends me back that same HTML document that I got in the browser. And you can see it hitting here, and it looks pretty much the same. The only thing that changed is the IP address. The .1 is the host machine, right, my Mac, and the .2 is itself, right? So this is actually it requesting against itself. And then it's doing it over HTTP 1.1, 200, right? Everything else looks relatively the same. So again, this is just putting it out to standard out, right? But if I say the same thing and I put that into res.txt, does the same thing. You can see the request happened over here, but now it goes into res.txt, right? So that's how you would do that same sort of wget sort of behavior, right? And another way to do that, you can also just do dash, I think capital O, yeah, dash capital O, res2.txt. And you can see here, I now have, did that not work? It didn't. Or is it lowercase o? Oh, yeah, okay, sorry. Res lowercase o, that'll output it to res.text.txt. So that way you don't have to pipe it, it just ends up in that file. And then if I do dash capital O with no file name, it'll just keep the same file name. So let's say I was doing it to like /output.txt. You can see here, it actually overwrote it, but because it's requesting from the same directory, right? But you can see here, it hit output.txt, it got a 200, so on and so forth. Good so far? Makes sense? All right. So let's say I'm doing a like an API endpoint, and it's something you need to post against, right? Well, that's really easy to do. You just do curl dash capital X post, and this changes the HTTP verb. If you're not familiar with HTTP verbs, just go look it up on the Wikipedia. The Wikipedia article is great for it. But there's get. We've been doing get requests this entire time. There's post requests, put requests, patch requests, delete requests, options requests, head requests, and there's more. But those are like the primary ones that you would ever see. But anyway, you can do curl dash capital X, and then you can put whatever verb you want there. You can even like do like made up verb, and it's like, okay, I can do that. I don't know what it does, but you can totally do that. But let's do post for right now, and then against the same HTTP : what is it, 192.168.64.2 : 8000. And you can see here it actually responds with HTML, says like, we don't know what to do with a post, which is fine, right? We don't expect Python to be able to deal with it. But you can see over here, we were doing a get request before, right? And here it's now changed to a post request, right? And in this case, it gave you a 501. 501s mean that like there was a server error, right? And in this particular case, the server is like, I don't know what to do with post requests, so you messed up, right? Okay. Good so far? Makes sense? All right. So let's move on to the next one. Let's say you want to send like a post body. So if I do dash lowercase d, and then I put here, I can say this is the post body. And I send that across here. Notice that this is still a post request. And it's a post request because GET requests don't have bodies, right? So only POST requests have bodies. And so implicitly, by giving it a body, it's like, okay, cool, I'm going to make this a POST request. So yeah, just know if you do a lowercase d like this and you send a POST body along with it, it's going to implicitly do a POST. If you wanted to, you can do a dash capital X like put here. And you can see it'll send that along. It is a put request, but it's also sending a body with it as well, right? So you can kind of mix and match those options as you need to. And yeah, I mean, you can come in here and you can do whatever you want. I can do curl dash capital X delete. Do I have that here? Oh, good. Let me just copy that so I don't have to keep writing it every single time. You can see there, deletes work. And again, just to prove my point, is you can put lol anything here, and it'll go ahead and send that, and it'll show up here as an HTTP verb over there. So hopefully you're starting to see like this can be really useful for testing out your APIs, right? You don't have to have some sort of fancy Postman client or anything like that. You can just use curl. Another thing that's really common is you need to send cookies with it as well. That's something you can definitely do here as well. You can say curl dash b, and you say like name equals Brian, and that will be sent as a cookie. I can then add like x patch, and that'll send. This doesn't show it here, but it is also sending the whatever I put in the dash b as a cookie along. Something I'll frequently do is I'll actually go start a session in the browser, get all of my cookies set. I will then copy everything that the browser is outputting for those cookies, and then I'll put it into a file, and then you can use something called a cookie jar. I'm not making this up, that's actually what it's called. And I think it's dash capital B. You can see here curl has an enormous amount of options as well. So one of these in here. So that's cookie. Oh, it's dash C. So if you put dash C, you can give it a cookie jar file, which is just a file that contains all of your cookie information in it. Because normally you have like long things that have session IDs and stuff like that. So that's useful to do as well. And yeah, cool. You can have it follow redirects. By default, curl won't follow redirects. So if I do, like I have a short link for this course that if you go to https bit.ly/linux-cli, it's going to say this file is actually a redirect that goes here, right? And it's also sending, I think that's going to be like a 302, probably a 302 redirect. So if you give it a dash capital L, it'll follow the redirect. And you can see now if I put the dash capital L, it actually sends literally everything for that course website along for the ride. Typically that's not something you have to do, but it's good to know that like it won't follow redirects. You have to tell it, yes, I do want you to follow redirects. You can send headers as well. So curl dash capital H, like accept language, :en dash US. And you can send, if you want to send multiple headers, you just give multiple dash H's. So you could give it like an authorization header, bearer 12345, HTTP :local, or yeah. Okay, and that's how you would send this here. Just use capital H multiple different times. And then I'm going to show you something that this is probably one of the things I do the most. So let's say I come back over here to my browser and I do, let's just go to my website. So bit-ly, oh, this is fine. Okay, so this is in Firefox that I'm showing you right now, but this will work in Chrome, this will work in Edge, and I imagine all of you are using at least one of those. I imagine it works in Safari. I honestly didn't check. Okay, so I'm going to come in here to the dev tools, which I opened with, Command Option I, and I'm going to refresh the page here so I can find all of the network requests in here. And let's say I wanted to get this one, right? So I'll click on this network request. You can right click on it and you can say copy as curl in here. And again, I checked this with Edge and Chrome and it should work exactly the same way. So copy as curl, okay? So I'm going to click that, and then I'm going to open this again, and then I'm just going to paste, and you can see here it copies this as a perfectly formed curl request. So imagine that you're on your website and you're browsing around and like one of your net requests doesn't work the way that you expect. You can just right click, copy that as curl, and then you can replay it again and again from your command line. So you can see it's sending to the same URL, -H, we know that that's a header, so it's giving it the same user agent. This is the same accept header, accept language. It's sending it as compressed, right? So it's going to actually compress that and gzip it. Connection keep alive, and some other stuff. And you can also, if you do it with like a post request, it'll copy all of like the request body and the verbs and all that kind of stuff. So now if I run this again, you'll see that it gets the exact same request, right? So this, again, this is super useful if you have something not working the way that you anticipated. You can go and copy it and run it over and again and again. Does it make sense? Cool. Again, that's honestly, if you're a web developer, that might be one of the most useful things I taught you today. All right, and then one more thing about curl that I want you to be very careful about. So if you go to MVM, which is what the tool that I use for managing my node version, and you go down to the installation instructions, it has this right there. I'll make that a bit bigger so you can see it, as the installation instructions. So you do a curl request, and then we know what this is, this pipe, right? So this is going to feed it into something, right? And this is going to feed it into bash. Why is this maybe give you a bit of pause? Because you need to really trust what is ever in this file, right? So if I go look at this, it's a long bash script that does a lot of stuff to set up like your MVM, which is a great tool. It's what I use for installing all of my node stuff. But this is really scary because whatever goes into this, it's going to execute and you don't actually know what it's going to do. So it could totally just dump all of your environmental variables and send them off to a remote server and you would have no idea, right? So I just want to give you a huge like red flag whenever you see pipe into bash that this could be very catastrophic for you. Now, if you ask me like, well, Brian, then how do I install MVM? I was like, I do this. I actually, to be honest with you, I do this. Because I know that GitHub is not going to replace it underneath the hood. I personally trust GitHub. I also work for the parent company of GitHub, so if they did something nefarious, I would be the first to be very upset about it. But if this is like Joe's blog, I absolutely will not pipe anything from a domain that I do not trust, right? So what you should definitely do then in that particular case is you can come in here, you can say curl blah and into my file.sh, right? And then I will run it from my file.sh, right? But this way I can verify that I got the same file that I thought I was going to get, right? Because again, the server can be smart enough to tell that you are downloading something and it can switch the file underneath you, right? So you can open in the browser, it'll show you one thing, and then you can go to curl it and it will change the file to be something else. It's actually even possible for it to detect that you are curl into bash, right? So it can actually detect that it's being piped by the way that the network traffic looks, right? And I left an article down at the bottom of the notes, it's really interesting to read, of how you can actually detect not only that you're curling it, but you're also curling it into bash. And so they can only switch it when you're doing curl bash, which is wild, right? It's some crazy stuff. So suffice to say, curl it into a file, read the file, then execute it. Unless you really trust like it's coming from GitHub, it's coming from, I don't know, Stack Overflow or something like that. But in any case, always read the file too, right? Okay, so I just wanted to throw that out there. That's a really huge vulnerability that you're opening yourself up to whenever you curl into bash.
Does the curl request itself change when you pipe? I don't know.
That's a valid question. So does the curl request itself change when it's piped? There's kind of two answers to that question. 99.999% of the time, no, it doesn't. And it's just requesting something and then putting that into a stream that can be read from or written to, right? As we have seen with other Linux programs. However, that article that I dropped at the bottom of the notes will actually show you it's possible to detect the network pattern of piping something using curl. And so it can actually detect that on a server and switch the file out from underneath you. So it does have a distinct network pattern, I guess is the answer to their question. But that requires like some real like nefarious actions. So, and something like GitHub's just not going to do that to you.